I was ankle-deep in chlorinated water, garden hose in one hand and a cold soda in the other, when I heard the unmistakable shriek of Jolene Ramsea sound so sharp it could make a grown man flinch. "Stop draining our pool," she screamed from behind my 6-foot wooden fence like she was summoning the neighborhood watchdogs. I blinked, confused. "It's my pool," I called back, still wondering if she was joking. But then I heard the unmistakable beeping of her phone dialing. Her next words hit harder than a belly flop. "Yes, 911? I'd like to report a man destroying community property." Just like that, my quiet Sunday became a live-action episode of Jolene versus reality. When I moved into the neighborhood last summer, neighbors warned me, "Keep your fence high and your hose locked." I laughed. I shouldn't have. Turns out they were warning me about Jolene, a woman so entitled she once tried to schedule synchronized lawn watering days for curb appeal unity. Her house sat diagonally behind mine, separated by hedges, a fence, and what I hoped was common sense. Clearly, it wasn't enough. I had decided to drain my private backyard pool to do some overdue maintenance. Cracks were forming, algae creeping in, and the water reeked of sunscreen and regret. It was my pool, on my deeded property, maintained and paid for by me. I even double-checked HOA guidelines to avoid drama. But of course, that didn't matter to Jolene. She stormed around the fence, bursting into my yard in rage slippers and a wine-stained bathrobe. "What do you think you're doing?" she shrieked, pointing at the water like I dumped toxic waste. "Draining my pool," I replied slowly, like I was talking to a toddler. "You can't destroy community assets. This is theft." "This pool is private," I said. "My backyard. My property." Jolene looked insulted that I dared counter her with logic. She snapped pictures like she was building a criminal case. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "This affects everyone. You're draining valuable resources." "Lady, the only thing I'm draining is my water bill." She started pacing like a lion in a Karen enclosure. "I know the rules. That pool is visible from the street. That makes it shared property." It would have been hilarious if she hadn't been serious. I pulled up the bylaws on my phone and handed it over. Section 14B, private outdoor installations are the responsibility and property of the homeowner. She scrolled for 2 seconds, then handed the phone back without acknowledging a word. "I'll let the authorities sort it out." And just like that, 2 patrol cars pulled up to my driveway. Jolene sprinted toward them, finger-pointing like she was on a soap opera. "There. That man is draining a neighborhood resource." The officers exchanged skeptical glances. "Sir, is this your property?" one asked, polite but amused. "Yes, and the pool is mine too." "Want the deed or ask any neighbor?" Jolene burst in. "He's lying. It's visible from the sidewalk, that makes it a shared aesthetic. He's violating community harmony." One officer rubbed his temple. "Ma'am, visible doesn't mean communal. By that logic, every rose bush would be public." The second officer asked her for ID, likely just to give the first a moment of peace. "We're not issuing any citations," the first officer said to me. "But maybe. Invest in some taller hedges." Jolene glared at me like I had hexed her. "This isn't over," she whispered dramatically before storming out, nearly tripping on my garden gnome. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. That evening, I found a flyer on my mailbox, "Pool vandalism in our midst, emergency HOA meeting proposed." It featured a blurry photo of me holding a hose, circled in red Sharpie with the words, "Pool criminal," scrawled across it. The next morning, every mailbox on the block had one. Jolene had gone full propaganda. By noon, people who used to wave now avoided eye contact. Even Mr. Grady, the sweet 80-year-old who asked about my tomatoes, now clutched his poodle tighter. She'd turned my pool into a suburban morality crisis. That afternoon, her new recruit, Brent, knocked on my door. "Hi. Just doing a neighborhood water audit." "You're auditing?" "My hose." Karen, Jolene mentioned chlorine runoff. Potential erosion. I raised an eyebrow. "If water drains wrong, it could destabilize flower beds," he said, flipping through a blank clipboard. "Brent, the water drains into a permitted runoff area. The chlorine levels are lower than a kiddie pool." He backed off and walked straight to Jolene's house. She rewarded him with a lemon bar. She was bribing people with baked goods. I called our actual HOA president, Mona, who sighed heavily. She's been submitting complaints all week. Chlorine equity, communal visual access, something about shared water destiny. Does she have any authority? None. She was removed last year after trying to find a family for a pink flamingo. Problem was, Jolene didn't need the HOA's permission to be a pain. The next day, she was in my yard again with a tape measure muttering something about Clause 7b, which she apparently wrote herself. Then came the sabotage. Trash began appearing in my yard napkins with flamingos. My mailbox jammed with fake flyers. One day, I found a bag of pool salt with a note, "For your next selfish act." Finally, a letter, a fake HOA citation demanding $500 for unauthorized water displacement. I gave it to Mona. "It's in Comic Sans," she laughed. "She's not even trying." Mona issued a formal notice. Private pools were private. But Jolene wasn't done. She erected a sign in her yard facing mine. Warning, selfish neighbor draining community unity. It had fairy lights. I responded with full-volume whale sounds aimed at her house. She called the cops again. "Is this a prank war?" one officer asked. "Or a psychological standoff?" At this point, both. The next day, 3 envelopes arrived, a violation notice, a fake petition, and a handwritten letter warning me of consequences. Then came the real crime. My pool pump stopped working. I checked the footage. Jolene, at 2:41 a.m., sneaking into my yard, screwdriver between her teeth. I handed the footage to Mona. This is beyond HOA madness. This is pool terrorism. Soon, Jolene escalated to fake inspectors. One Saturday, Carl showed up in a safety vest and a hat that read, "Aqua Authority." "Your pH levels are endangering the community," he said, holding a test strip. His card read, "Carl's Concrete and Karaoke." When I called the police, he ran. Left behind was a clipboard with directions from Jolene. "Say it's a biohazard. Scare him." That night, Jolene entered my yard with a hose. She began refilling my drained pool. "It's for the neighborhood," she yelled. "No one can see it but you." She refused to leave. Officer Diaz arrived again. "Did he invite you here?" "No." "Then I'm going to have to ask you to leave." The next day, flyers advertising a community swim day. At my house, with a photo of my pool. People actually showed up. I stood by the locked, dry pool as confused neighbors looked around. Karen Sadie mean Jolene said this was a shared event, one said. Nope. One by one, they left. Jolene stood alone with her cooler and whistle. That night, I had an idea. No more defense. It was time for creative offense. I installed motion-triggered lights, ultra-sensitive sprinklers, and outdoor speakers playing audio clips of Jolene screaming from past incidents. That night, she returned, trench coat and duffel bag in hand. She was going to refill my pool. The moment she stepped in, sprinklers fired. She screamed. Her own voice echoed back from the speakers, "This is community property." She slipped and ran. The next day, I sent the footage to Mona, Jolene's unauthorized pool reclamation mission. "We're calling an emergency meeting," Mona said. "It's time." The meeting was packed. Jolene arrived early, acting like she hadn't just been soaked by her own ego. Mona let her ramble about community cohesion before dropping the hammer, trespassing, harassment, false claims. Neighbors shared their stories. One said she reported their toddler for unlicensed bubble blowing. Another said she cited their poodle for tail wagging near sensitive shrubs. The board voted, Jolene banned from all HOA activity. Trespass from my property. As she left, someone muttered, "Maybe she can drain her ego next." Peace returned. Neighbors waved again. "Mr. Grady brought cookies." I painted a mural on the inside of the empty Paola cartoon, Jolene getting blasted by sprinklers with the caption, "This is what entitlement gets you." She saw it from her window. Slammed it shut. Days later, her husband began moving boxes. A for sale sign went up. The Wilsons moved in. Cupcakes. A golden retriever. Actual kindness. I filled the pool. Threw a real party. Mona showed up, smiling. "You reminded everyone," she said. "That community means respect." Weeks later, I got a package. No return address. Inside, the real HOA handbook and a sticky note. For the next one. "You survivor." I laughed. The city even backed my mural. The saga of Jolene and the pool? Over. Now, I sit by the water, soda in hand, garden hose coiled nearby, knowing I defended not just a pool, but peace. And if another Jolene ever rises, I've got cameras, sprinklers, and maybe even a second mural ready.